So next up, we have Pete Kowalczyk, who is an AI conversation designer at a government digital service. Round of applause, please, for Pete.
Say that. Hello, I am Pete. I work at GDS. It's government digital service. For anybody who doesn't know, they're the company or the organisation that's built GovUK, and they manage a lot of the design standards for the government. And recently, Alana, who's in the audience, shouts to Alana. Her and I have been the first conversation designers in Gov, and I know we've got a few other government conversation designers in the audience, which I wasn't expecting, which is a bit of pressure. And Rahel, I didn't know Rahel was going to be here, and then I look up to both these people, so a bit of pressure. How do I just right on this? So what I'm going to try and talk about is just some things I've learned about this work, where essentially we've been building from scratch. So a lot of companies are using frameworks and third parties, and I think that's fantastic. The things that I've learned here with a lot of other people are, okay, so we're going to build something from scratch. What do we do with an agent that's got access to information, but also transactional services, handoff to our escalation routes, these kind of things. And let's see how it goes. I've just learned how to stretch text in Figma. So that's 20 years too late. So 3 things I'm going to talk about. One claim, I guess, is rich experiences can emerge from simple rules. So the agentic stuff that I'm going to talk about is basically going to be designed around loops, and I'm going to try and show you what I mean by that. Second thing is, I feel like experiences are really made in the transition. So with an agentic system, you're constantly moving between different states, and it's not linear, you can move back and forth. And it's really in those moments where you transition that trust can be lost, or really quite weight-bearing moments that you need to nail. So I'll try and talk about that. Finally, I feel like the best experiences often say less. Like, these systems generate a lot of data. If you vibe coded anybody, initially the vibe coding stuff just displays lots of information, and I think part of the skill of this whole model design work or conversation design work in the AI era is to filter that out, essentially. So let's give it a go. So I've done a bit of AI work for these places. Nicole, shouts to Nicole from OVO, is also here. And I'm going to try not to break any NDA agreements. So these are all made up examples, and I'm also pretty pretentious about references, so you're going to have to bear with me with that as well. Okay, simple loops. Rich experiences emerge from simple loops. Here we go. Flocking birds. They're not that tenuous, they get better. So when you see these systems of animals moving around, they're responding to local, in this case, birds, and they're very simple interactions, but they create like a bigger experience when taken as a whole. So that's one tenuous example. One example is shells. So like shells is this like logarithmic process that is very simple, but it builds into something quite beautiful and unique. You can really go down the rabbit hole. Stephen Wolfram's got this idea of cellular autonomy. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's basically everything could be explained potentially by these simple rules, and if you go far enough, you lose your mind, like Max Cohen from the movie Pi. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it doesn't end well. There's a drill involved. But a loop is what I'm trying to talk about. So we're talking about a user input, and this is based on some like prototypes we've been building. How might we create experiences just from, okay, we've got an input, ascertain what the goal is. If you don't know what the goal is, ask. Once you know what the goal is, look around at the system that you're working within, and what tools do you have available, basically? Do you have the information to help with that question? Do you have a service? Looking at all the tools you have available, is it best to speak to a person about this, So going around in this loop, and the reason why I've highlighted goals here is just really going back to the linguistic definition of a conversation, which is cooperation towards a goal, like between two or more people. And so I've been experimenting with some prototypes of just like, well, how far can you go with a loop like this? And I feel, is this going to play? Let's see what happens. So this is just one vibe coded thing where, so on the right is the sort of traces of what's going on, and on the left is the conversation. But this is people asking questions, trying to figure out what the goal is. Once you know what the goal is, try to complete that goal by filling slots, essentially. And this is going to go too fast, but what is happening here is it's constantly like thinking, well, what's the goal? And if I don't know, I'm going to ask. And if the goal changes, then it updates. And that simple rule can then result in some quite complex, or rich, I should say, experiences. I'll just let this play out. Let's see. So in this case, we found out some information, and there's a task we can do for them. Or in this next case, it's something we can't do, so we hand off to an advisor. But this is all being generated from a loop. And what that involves is, okay, we've got these, let's see, what am I looking at here? Yeah, so on the left is the loop that it goes through. So it's like, what are the goals that have not been completed? What are the goals that have been completed? Phase is something I'll get into in a second. If we know what the goal is, do I need to ask any questions before I then ultimately submit all that data to some API endpoint? And then in terms of what's available as a tool or as a, I hope this is making sense. It made sense at the time, but like there are some, I'm going to just read straight from here. So immediate services would be, in this case, these services directly meet the pragmatic goal of the user at that point in time. What did I just put? The contextual services in this case is services related to that goal that you can then offer up as like a next step, or you could package it up into a combination of things as one package of work for the user to complete. Phases, I think these are all just experiments, but found that there's often like an exploratory phase where the AI doesn't know what's going on. The user can ask random questions, go on side quests. The AI can lead and like find out, diagnose essentially like what the user's problem is. And then once we know what the goal is, we can ask specific questions to see what's relevant and submit things, suggest related things. And if you can't do it within the system, you can escalate to a human. I am going to try and show how complexity emerges from that. So let's say if somebody said to us, we want to get my driving license sorted. Sorted is quite a vague term, so the system doesn't know exactly what the pragmatic meaning of that is. So then it finds that it asks some questions to find out. And then once it knows the goal, in this case, renew driving license, it can then find that there's a service for that, and it can fill the slots of that, slots being the information we need to send to the API. It can then submit that, but then because we know they've ordered a new license because they've changed their address, in that case, there are many things that you might want to do at that point, like update the electoral roll, register for a doctor, there's a few other things. So then we can then suggest those. But the point I'm trying to get across here is it's all just happening in a loop. And then maybe they moved because if they told us, the reason we moved is because we've had a baby, there's all these like emergent experiences that can build just from a simple loop. I'm going to move on from that now, but if you want to chat about it a bit later, happy to do that. So we're in a loop. We're looking for the goals and then finding the tools that are available, and we're going through these phases: exploring, asking questions, submitting, suggesting, escalate. And that's where we get into the idea of transitions, where like if that loop was just endless and was continuous, there's no sense of closure on anything, and there's no sense of like progress indication and where's this whole enterprise going. And that's why I think transitions are important. So pretentiously, we've got Edouard Leroy, this the French philosopher, dapper young man, talking about experience in this quote. So he says, it is a melodious evolution of moments, each of which contains the resonance of those preceding and announces the one which is going to follow. I'm not sure exactly why I included that now, but there's this idea that it's these moments that build into an experience, and they're worth paying attention to. To go a bit self-help on you, life is in the transitions. I've never read this book, but it talks about how to navigate life's biggest apparently transitions with meaning, purpose, and skill. And I think it's the meaning, purpose, and skill that we're here for, you know. So some examples of what might these transitions look and feel or sound like. So we've got here an example. These are all just quite random, but a holding pattern. So somebody's asked quite a complex question. Let's acknowledge that, yeah, okay, we're going to look into that. That's a sort of orientation moment. And all these moments build sort of trust in the system that, yeah, this system knows who I am and what I need and will act in my best interest. Let's see what's available. So let's say, okay, I know what you need, but now let's see what is indeed available to you. I'm going to ask you some questions. So we've shifted from user-led exploration to an AI-led situation. So we need to set that up before we start to interrogate somebody, just so they know why am I being asked all these things. Often people's lives issues are complex and they have more than one discrete need. So yeah, for sure we can look into both those things, but the AI can prioritize one and deal with one at a time. Offering alternatives is an interesting example in government. I guess if somebody asks about council housing, that is certainly something we can help with, but maybe housing benefit is more suited to you, for example. So the AI can like bring up alternatives and help meet what you truly want to achieve, I guess. Even smaller examples like, I'm going to bring something up for you, like it's worth really acknowledging that's happening. Callbacks, yeah, okay, so in this case, we've had a chat, we've done a thing. In this case, we've like updated a driving license, but oh, by the way, do you still want to sort out the bins that you were talking about earlier? So just having that memory persist and be able to call back, I think is quite a powerful thing. And then finally, just on the loop, it is, you know, they're so eager to please these systems, so they just go on perennially, like forever, unless you design in moments of reflection, you know. So in this case, it's like, yeah, we've done these things, seem to have done everything you want, and it's a bit of a sort of reflection point. So those things don't happen naturally unless you design. Yeah, models are getting better, aren't they? They don't always happen exactly how you want, is probably a better way to say it. And because they're so, I think, important, I think they're worth designing. And yes, you can write prompts for these things. You can give a few short examples like Michael was talking about earlier. With state transitions, what we've found is like having some kind of hard-coded state machine underneath to really make the transitions happen when things are true or not, and not rely on LLMs has been quite important. So, okay, last bit. Best experiences, yeah, saying less. So I think I'm repeating myself here, but they're just generating a lot of data, and some of it's more useful than others. I think there's a principle that I've come across where you want to be able to access the data, but you don't necessarily need to see it immediately all the time. Like just knowing that it's available can be enough. And these are quite like random. Oh wait, no, we're here, aren't we? Why am I saying this? Bruce Lee. I wish I hadn't put these in. Yeah. Okay. So it's not a daily increase. Sorry for anybody who can't see it. Recently is telling us it is not daily increase but daily decrease. Hack away at the inessentials. We've got Miles Davis. I always listen to what I can leave out. And probably more relevant, Dieter Rams talks about good design is as little design as possible. So what we're trying to do is, I think it's our responsibility as designers to manage this, like, faucet, this hose of data. We need to select from that data and present only what's needed at the right time. So some examples here, I'm going to whiz through these because they're quite like rushed examples. But when, for example, if you're offering to do something, a model would generate all this. I've just found from some experiments, it'll say, I can do it for you, I'll do it in 3 days, that the date is this, it's going to go here, this kind of like over explaining of things. And it's important to have that available. But at this moment, in order to make this decision, do you need that right in the interface, And that's basically the principle of all these things. So I might not bother talking about them in too much detail. There is one that Ilana was talking about the other day that I liked. I'm gonna if you want these slides, I can share these after. Here's an example where sometimes like saying nothing is the best thing to do. Somebody told us that they've become pregnant. We have no idea how they feel about that, and it's probably best not to even use any language in that case. So we've talked about simple loops, rich experiences emerging from simple loops, experiences made in the transitions, and best experiences often say less. And that's some things I've learned.